Okay, first, we are organizing events in May, so a little bit, in case you are interested, we have this blockchain for the selection and the logistics forum. So we have a lot of speakers from like the Port of Antwerp and Port of Houston. Actually, it's very difficult to get them on board. And you wonder what they're doing with blockchain. They do because with so many companies like Maersk, the shipping lines, right, and the other ports around the world is using blockchain. So they feel like they must have something. Otherwise, blockchain is used for different agencies, entities, how they exchange data, right? How they use blockchain as a shared platform. So it's always when you have your partners or business right entities you do business with as a port, and then when everybody else is using blockchain or have a plan to do to adopt the blockchain, and then if you don't have one, and then it doesn't work, right? So you see, so they gonna have more sort of speakers added, and then we're trying to make this event successful as a way to help to the economic growth in this area. So that's one of the goal of this. And can I see how you? This one. Oh, I see. So. What I see is okay. First question. Oh, I already have first answers. How many blockchain developers in Texas? So you'll be surprised that sometimes we did a lot of data mining, right? GitHub projects, people who commit code to those projects. How many of those projects, blockchain projects, and sometimes you'll be puzzled. There are more ICOs than blockchain developers, and you wonder what's going on here. So, and in entire Texas, right? So there are around. I mean, sure, people can say, oh, maybe not exactly this number because what a project. You're gonna look at every blockchain projects, right? In GitHub, there's so many projects. So around that's actually 180 developers actually in Texas contribute one commit with right or more than one to blockchain projects in GitHub. So that's actually a very small number of developers, and there are a lot of people who are interested. So that's why we're trying to reach out and then to have more meetings, presentations, engagement, and try to grow the community. Because if we don't have enough number of developers, and then how that's going to move forward the ecosystems, right? So I can tell you there are more than 178 fiat platforms. So you can see that if one developer in Texas for one platform, that's just one. And okay, so I'm trying to struggling with this. So I'm in editing mode.
Oh, that's why.
Okay, so here's our team. Oh, we have one here in the north, and this is our team. So we'll be doing research in blockchain. So what research we'll be doing? So theoretical foundation of distributed ledger and blockchain consensus protocols, as well as analysis of those the protocols, and then are they stable, right? What properties you can prove or disapprove of those protocols, as well as applications of the distributed ledger. Also, we do interdisciplinary research. Two very relevant disciplines. One is legal, right? So a lot of it seems like this is perfect for attorneys. So because some actually say there will be a tsunami of lawsuits, right? For attorneys, that's perfect, right? What they need is a lot of clients, right? There was a tsunami of lawsuits. They say must be in this, and as well as finance, right? So when we talk about crypto assets and then consider as an investment and all that finance people they're so interested, and so in terms of interdisciplinary research, both legal and finance and others in terms of specific application scenarios, and also case studies. Right? There are so many ICOs, so many data platforms, many different coins. and we try to sit together and then look at them. I mean, we cannot look at every one of them, but those major ones, what the technology used behind, it does not actually make sense, or it's completely right, just nonsense. As well as the develop applications. So in terms of research, here such some examples. We did study sharing economy. For example, you mentioned Airbnb or Uber. How you gonna control the door lock, for example, right, using smart contract, as well as study the consensus protocols like what Intel, right, as some of you know, I have using trusted computing enclave, try to enable like the proof of elapsed time, right? So if you've heard about that, that's part of the Hyperledger project, as well as applications I mentioned, international trade, supply chains, because supply chain visibility or transparency has been a big problem because there are so many stakeholders in this ecosystem, right? You will be surprised. Actually, there are more than perhaps 30 stakeholders touching the supply chain when shipping something from one continent to another continent. And the information sharing and the transparency has been a big problem in the supply chain industry, as well as how to support mobile clients, smartphones, other things like e-government, how to use a blockchain to support public right, functions, or that's also our research. So it's quite a broad. We have teams often say, oh, we're just so right, spread out, and so we need more manpower. We need like almost 100 people to look at all those problems. And one specifically, right? So we look at other applications, right? I mentioned supply chain, but this is specifically talk about blockchain for good. It has been right. Blockchain could be a force for good, but you have to understand how to use it, right? So the World Bank, right? The other agencies, even USAID. First, I don't know the budget of USAID in the future, and maybe they're completely cancelled by the new president, the administration. But anyway, so there are a lot of potential applications of blockchain smart contracts for to promote good and the social the development, economic development. One specific, I think we maybe some sitting in the audience are interested, in particular Noor is very interested in, spend a lot of time looking into this is financial inclusion, right? So around the world, in many countries or places where you can see here the data, right? According to World Bank, over 2 billion people has no access to any financial services, right? And also, as one place, Southeast Asia, only 27% of the region's 600 million people they have an actual bank account. How about other place, right? In Africa, you can see the data here. This is the actually average high-income countries. 90%, right? They have access to financial services. But look at other places in Africa. Some is just 11% or 13% or 21%. And you wonder like how blockchain can help, right? So one particular right in terms of technology is you look at the smartphone adoption ratio, right? So much higher than the financial access to financial services. So more likely the people in Africa, they have a smartphone or mobile phone, and they can exchange messages, communicate. Then they have actually a bank account or access to financial services. So that tells you something, right? When you read the news, Foxconn, right? So spend tens or $30 million investing in blockchain. So wonder how I interpreted this, right? So now you see those consumer devices, they have wider adoption in those places than actually financial services or institutions. And okay, let's go again. Oh,
Is it back in edit?
I think it's doing something weird. Not think. Okay.
Oh, it's yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, I see something different from what I saw there. Okay, so They're just priced this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry about that. One is also the contributing factor is the informal economy. So I actually visited Peru a couple of years ago. I was heard, oh, like a huge percentage of our economy actually not recorded. This is informal, right? And then I look at this data. Actually, it's true. The informal employment and the informal economy in Peru is 69%. So that means a lot of people are off the book, and this contributed also to why, right, the low rates access to financial services, because you don't have a regular paycheck, you don't, right? They're not going to have you're not going to get a credit, you're not going to write a bank account because that's required. So that's all also, right, tell us something like in terms of opportunity to adopt blockchain. So, but I mean, a lot of people see the potential opportunities, but to actually do it, right? And do I also can, we spend a lot of time, we discuss, we look at what other people are doing and what we can do as right, innovation is much harder when you start to do something. And it's easy to sell the story, the global picture, but we get into the details, and it will be much harder. The reason is not right. The technology is not mature. We have the tools to do it. And many people say we're going to develop mobile apps, but you look at all those cryptocurrency wallets apps, they have very few downloads. And then how about swipe cards? How about the pre-install of mobile handset? But I worked in Nokia and Motorola before, right? They have things like iPhones and Android, and those handset manufacturers, they're not gonna install some software from some company with 20 employees, right? As a startup, so they will just basically talk with you and lock you forever in this discussion, and and one other way, right? Try to make sure that the technology will be adopted, even you see the potential, the opportunity there. And then we need a really killer app scenarios, right, that can facilitate. And the opportunity is there, but only for those who know how to achieve it, right? The other thing is a democratic process. So people also realize that this is immutable ledger. You can do a lot of things, right? In particular, for example, voting, right? We're not talking about like voting here, but also voting in other countries, and also in the local areas. And so the cost of voting is too high right now for taxpayers. It's about $7 to $25 per vote. That's very expensive process. And also, right, the current process is kind of right now friendly to people to facilitate or promote. They can actually come out to vote, and the records also insecure and vulnerable to potential like cyber attacks and tampering. So the concept, right? People are saying, oh yeah, sure, why not put ballot box on blockchain? So that's tamper-proof, right? It's very difficult to be hacked, and you have the records. It's immutable. When there is a dispute, you can always say that's the record, and also it can enable smartphones, mobile devices as a right, the way to vote and to promote for people to participate. So the benefit is a lower cost, not like $7 or $20 per vote. It's secure, it's tamper resistant, it's auditable, and also trusted by the public. But it has one problem. You use public blockchain for as ballot box privacy. So all my votes will be recorded, and then you know who voted for whom, and how to protect the privacy. So I will cover this. Actually, there is a solution that people have been working on this. The government contract, right? So Nor just published a paper on how to use blockchain smart contract for government, like e-government scenarios where smart contract concept to government contract, because this is where you need transparency, right? As a citizen, and the government is not transparent, and we don't know what they're doing, and a lot of the process is hidden. How about this concept of smart contract as a way for government to manage their, right, making money to as contractors, as well as the DAO as a concept to manage government funds, right? That's bring transparency, auditability, and also perhaps reduce the bureaucrats, right? All those paperworks and less corruption. Because it's transparent, right? It's difficult Because a lot of the corruption scenarios happens when you don't see the information, right? You don't see the flow. You don't know where the money goes. As well as the step toward self-service governments, right? Beyond just the automation of those bureaucratic process. So as well as, right, I will just touch those points like fair trade, there are opportunities as well, and the environment, right? And then we have carbon trade. What do you put carbon trade on blockchain, right? Or other ways of trade supply chains. Maybe you can tell you, should you buy the product or not because it's pollute the environment. Maybe you should, like the consumer knows, and then you buy this product actually made, right, and by how much it pollute the environment. So the water, right? A lot of people in the world, they don't have access to clean water. Well, like a blockchain can be a solution for this. When not, there are a lot of right opportunities. If you like the brainstorming, and we can discuss after the presentation. So, but also, right, blockchain seems like everyone talk about it, and seems like can solve all the problems. But as we we did our case study, it's very difficult to get it right. The question is, what's the competitive advantage over services based on centralized infrastructure or cloud? If you ask that question, I will guarantee a lot of people don't know. So why do you use blockchain? Why not use cloud? And what's the value proposition, right? Using a public blockchain for what you want to do. Okay, so now I try to spend some time to explain some of the enabling technology behind for those usage scenarios. And because you may say, oh yeah, that sounds all good, but how to do it, right? So getting into the implementation details. And in order to voting and democratic process, fair trade, as well as a lot of those scenarios I just described, like a financial inclusion, what you need is identity management, right? So how to design identity management for the blockchain is not easy because in the public blockchain, like Bitcoin, you want to create arbitrary number of wallets, right? So there are no identity management here. Make sure I can manage your own wallet or not, but if you don't know, right? Even the two wallets, it's the same person behind that wallet, like those two wallets, and one can create 10,000 wallets, and also this requirement for term of regulation, right? If you transfer money across border, we always have the anti-money laundering and then know your customer, those requirements, and for wider adoption of blockchain, and then the identity management is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, right, you ended up just with a small amount of people actually using it cross-border payment, right? This is absolutely, whenever there is a blockchain startup, they say, well, ICOs, we do cross-border transactions. How are you going to support KYC and AML? It's always a question. And then it all becomes identity management. So as a writer, the possibility to create fake IDs, and it's not actually an easy task. We had some projects which are supported by the federal government. It's a narrower, right, kind of in terms of what, because it's a research contract with government. This sort of narrower scope in terms of research, but it could be used and applied to a wider identity management for blockchain. Our project is try to say how to, for governments, right, issue the credentials, IDs. In this case, if you don't know what is TWIC, TWIC is a credential issued by the federal government for transportation workers, like truck drivers. And if they pick up containers, right, you need to know who they are, because those containers are expensive. It's possible one container has more than $200,000 value of good in that container. So the government will say, oh, you're a truck driver. We have to go through a process, right, to look at your records and to have the criminal history, and then we will issue this TWIC card, and you can use it to prove to others you actually trusted a transportation worker. So this has been not very well. Imagine $400 million spent by the federal government for this program, and very little adoption. So the reader is very expensive. So the reader costs $20,000 per reader, and a lot of places they just say, oh, this is a government mandate, we're not going to use it because it's too expensive to adopt. And then even the card holders complain, I have this card, right? It sounds like we spend money, but it should be some way I can use it. And our research is basically try to look at the two technologies, blockchain as well as mobile smartphones, and how those two can be combined and to facilitate adoption of this technology. The government issued IDs. The idea is actually very, very simple to associate or ban the mobile devices with the government issued credentials and protect that with biometrics like Face ID, Touch ID. So this is where the commercial right world advances so fast than the government, right? We have face recognition, very robust face recognition on the smartphones. And then the government has been talking about how to, for example, I mean, we have work on this, like, oh, how to track using face recognition, the borders, the flags, right? When you exit the country, want to know you actually live. And then they try to do some experiments using face recognition for that. And it's been years. And before I still not, right? We don't see how they're going to be adopted. The idea is basically say you have the government issued IDs and we can associate it with your phone. It's a unique association. And then there's some certificate about that, like an association. That certificate is stored on your phone, is protected with biometrics, so that item can be only unlocked if the right person unlock it. And it's stored in the blockchain, so anybody can use this to verify. Right? So that means you can use the government issued ID to show who you are, and use that on the blockchain. So, for example, they can say, "Oh, you're actually a legitimate person in the U.S." Right? For example, they can prove that claim. You're not someone from somewhere else. Don't worry, you're a person without a criminal history. And also we try to use, right? You wonder, oh, there are a lot of mobile malwares, right? It could be stolen, it could be hacked. The way we protect this is similar to how Apple, right? Apple Pay. So how Apple Pay protect your credit, right? Cards. And this based on the hardware enclave. This is a little bit technical, so basically like ARM, that's the processor, right? Used by Apple for iPhones. It has this technology called the trust zone, or Intel or AMD, they all have similar technology. It's basically a hardware enclave, like a safe box. You can put information there, store there. It's tamper resistant. So in our case, we just put the certificate of the binding in the trust zone, put it in a secure storage, and it's protected by the biometric. That means if you, in order to use that to claim you're the person, you have to unlock it using your biometric. That's already implemented by those smartphones. Let's get into right. That's the identity part, and we're thinking that it can be applied to many other scenarios as well.
Wasn't he putting on the blockchain the person, their relevant information?
No, we don't do biometric information, put the binding. So anyone, basically, there is association of this, right? Like a government issued credentials with this mobile device, and then there was a certificate of that association, and then this is unique in the sense that you have that, you can prove it, like a private key, but it's not, right? It's more than that. You put it in a trust zone and unlock it using your biometric, and then when there is a transaction, say, show me. I only do this transaction, let's say, with a person without a criminal background or history. So you can always claim, oh, I'm the one because I have this government ID. Because you have that, because that's already, it's a requirement. You have that ID, that means you don't have a criminal background. So you can prove that. And then they can verify that using information stored on the blockchain. But it's like your private key. You need a certificate stored on your mobile device, and then you unlock it. Because otherwise, people can make sure that no one else can use that. And then we get into the design specifics.
Right?
Yeah.
Has to be on your smartphone.
Right. And then you get another issue, right? What if my phone got stolen? But those are details, right? We can discuss offline. Those are getting into technical, the protocol design, right? In terms of privacy, right? I mentioned if someone put a ballot box on the blockchain, how to protect their privacy, because it's public ledger. So there are different technologies, right? For transactions, if you heard about the mixnet, that's what used by like the cryptocurrency like Dash, right, or other cryptocurrencies using the similar technology try to protect the transaction privacy. Means even public ledger, no one knows actually A and B has a financial or cryptocurrency transaction. And then so multi-party computing. This is the fascinating because I give one example. I will not get into details of technology. How to develop a poker game application on blockchain, right? Because not like a centralized scenario where you have company who can shuffle the cards and right give to players. But in the case of blockchain, it doesn't have a central entity or right organizations shuffle the cards or give the card to the players. So how are you gonna right make sure it's trusted and then players are no cheating involved? So the multi-party computing is actually the solution to this problem, and people have been using it for like apps over blockchain, like play cards, or any other similar application. What I will cover is the zero knowledge. That's actually where this can be applied. The zero knowledge it's a basically a concept originally right, proposed in the 80s by a group of MIT people doing research, and they were working on this problem, so-called interactive proof systems. What it does, so basically you have two parties, and one party called prover wants to show some evidence, right, to the other party called a verifier to convince them that something is true, some mathematical statement, or something like without showing all the information, right? I just show you some evidence or proof, and you can verify as a verifier. Well, anyone can be a verifier to verify what I say is true without telling you everything. I will give some example here. Okay, so how this can be used for right privacy is because this zero knowledge can imagine that zero knowledge can be your identity, can be your assets, your own. It can be sort of like crypto currency transaction could be right the amount of points you're transferring from one account to another account. So anything you want to be put on the ledger and then later verified to others that actually what you say is true, but without disclosing what actually put there, right? Original information that you can always apply zero knowledge. I will give you one concrete example of voting, and hopefully you understand the concept, but not really the details, right? Because that does require some background in applied cryptography. So this is non-mathematical description. I thought this is perhaps one of the best I've seen explaining zero knowledge. So assume that you have a network of cell phone towers, and here you're facing a problem that if there is edge, that means the two cell phone towers they neighbors. So if they're neighbors, they cannot use the same frequency band because that will create interference. So the question is, can I what frequency band I allocate to each cell phone tower so there will be no interference? Assuming you have three communication bands, and then this is one solution, right? This is just one example. So the color represents the frequency. So you can see here, these two cell phone towers use the same frequency band, but they're not neighbors. And these two are neighbors, but they don't use the same frequency band. And so that's the one solution. And then how this relates to zero knowledge? Okay, so here's key. What you can show to other people, like you have a solution, but you don't want to disclose the solution itself, but they can be certain you know the solution. So that's the zero knowledge scenario. I mean, you can say, oh, I just hide all the solutions, right? I tell you I have a solution, and believe me, trust me, and but I'm not going to tell you. So, and then you can turn this into a game. Into a game in the sense that you can tell people who don't believe, say, I allow you to randomly pick some right nodes, the hats here, and that can show you, give you a look that actually proves to you I have the solution. So as an example, right, and then you can ask anyone who don't believe you to remove the cover of two hats and two nodes, and then they verify. Well, that's look like they don't, right? Look at this meet the requirement, and then you wonder the question, right? How do I do this which convinced me for this problem is just small, right, set of nodes. And very, as example, how I could be convinced, right? You do have the solution. But think about it, if it's not just this number of nodes, you have 10 million nodes, right? And I allow you to flip randomly choose 1,000 heads, and then you verify randomly. And then see the likelihood I don't know the solution is very low. By the probability, it can be just think about a lottery, right? It's almost certain I have the solution. So this is one example of maybe intuitive explanation of zero knowledge. What it does is I give you some information as evidence, but without disclosing the information, right? And then I can prove to you, you can verify that I know the certain things. That certain things can be identity, can be vote, right? As in the case of vote, it's my vote, who I vote. It could be identity, could be transaction amount, could be ownership, could be anything you can imagine that. You want to put it in the public ledger, but you don't want to disclose that to others. I give one example. There's a voting, right? A voting privacy. This is basically someone else's work. They use a smart contract for boardroom voting with maximum voter privacy using zero knowledge. That's one example. I hope you, by this example, you sort of understand what it does. But I know it has equation. And how this works is basically you have a smart contract set up for voting, and then those are voters, and they come up some secret key, which is like a private key, right, in the Bitcoin case, and then that's the X, and then they send the zero knowledge. See, this is ZKP, that's a zero knowledge proof of they know that secret, and then they send the voting key and then the zero knowledge to the smart contract. So everyone does that, and then the next step, then everyone, because everything recorded on the public ledger, so based on the voting key sent by everyone, everybody will compute this thing. And this is called, we created the key, is a new key. And after that, then they can cast a vote. The vote basically is a multiply of their voting key with this new key and their vote. And this is a vote. And the vote has to be, let's say, binary, right? 0 or 1, yes or no. And you don't actually put your vote there. You don't put, I say yes or I say no. You put a zero knowledge of your vote. So you can prove to others you vote 0 or 1, or yes or no, but you don't tell. The public ledger doesn't record your direct answer. When it's recorded, it's a zero knowledge. It's a proof. That's what you send to the smart contract. So this one and this zero knowledge of your vote, and then the magic is here. So something like the ledger recorded encrypted votes of everyone, right? And then you say, how am I gonna know who win? Because I have to add them together, and that sounds like impossible. But actually, that's all. I'm not gonna, right? This is all technical stuff. When in this case, everybody can just compute based on the casted vote, multiply them together, and then magically the end result is the sum of the vote, and then who won the vote. And then what it does? What it does is everybody can cast a secret vote, and then everybody can verify who won the voting process. So it protects privacy, and it is a technology where the public ledger can be used for similar problems or other the privacy scenarios where you want to use this public and it's publicly verifiable, but the privacy is protected using zero knowledge. This is just one example. It could be used in many other scenarios. And also integration with smartphones. That's part of the research we're doing, how to support lightweight clients and how to integrate the messaging applications with blockchain, like public blockchain. So one thing specific technology we actually studied, come up with a solution related to the payment verification. Because blockchain is huge, right? So if you want to store all the history, right, the transactions, it's required. No way you can store it on a smartphone, right? It requires hundreds of gigabytes of storage, some maybe towards terabytes of data. One way to do this in the original idea in the Satoshi, the paper is using just store the headers, right? And then you compute some hash to protect the integrity of the headers. But this actually has a linear storage requirement. So basically, we propose technology where if you have lightweight client like smartphones, and there is transaction you want to authenticate or validate, right? Someone say, I will send you 10 bitcoins, pay me, and I will send. They own the 10 bitcoins, right? And it's hard to verify the claims of all of transactions. So then you have to store the whole ledger. Say, I don't have the space. So how to solve this problem? If you have only a lightweight client, the way that we solve this problem is we come up with a scheme that only require constant size of storage. It's sort of like compression. You compress the whole ledger into some constant size of information that you can use that to verify any payment claim. Like, oh, I own Bitcoin, I want to sell to you, and you can verify I'm the owner, I have that money, and then you pay me, I will send to you. So that kind of scenario. So to support lightweight clients and to be able to validate payment transactions, this is actually a component or stack toward like P2P transactions, right, using over blockchain. And how to integrate with messaging protocols like those, WhatsApp, Signal, or Google allow those messaging apps, and how to enable them, right, be able to issue transactions over blockchain. Okay, a little bit of this is just maybe 5 or 8 minutes about challenges. And what are the, right? In the case of blockchain, why from computer science? This is a case where computing is power. And you wonder what this means. What is that's one straightforward, right? The Bitcoin network is proof of work. The proof of work, all the computers behind. Someone own 50% or more computing power or hashing power. It can take over Bitcoin, right? So, and also if we use blockchain based on proof of work as a way to enable digital economy, right? The so-called internet of value. So you have something valuable. It doesn't matter if it's a physical asset, a virtual asset, you put it on the blockchain, you can trade. And then behind, you support this kind of system using proof of work, and then back to our computing power, right? So who owns the most computing power can hijack or take over. So the computing is power. And the question is how to, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, on the previous slide you said P2P. Did you mean purchase to pay or peer-to-peer?
This is transaction peer-to-peer, right? So because
Okay.
you have to verify that after.
Yeah.
It's a verification. It's not like, sure, you can always, but how you verify is true, right? So that's verification part of the P2P. It's just one component to support the P2P. So, and then I would become more clear later why the computing power is so important here is because at this moment there is this battle for consensus protocols. Because people think the original proof of work is not scalable. So now they all come up with a different version of that. For example, federated consensus, delegate proof of stake for a lot of the different systems right now. So they will think this is better, more scalable, and the question is that the assumption behind. The assumption behind actually is all based on this so-called good oligarchy hypothesis. The hypothesis is you have a proof of stake-based system or delegates-based system, delegated proof of stake, whatever. There are a group of nodes or participants. They will control the system, but they're good because they have stake, and then they will not mess up with the system because they will lose money if they do so. And it's more like rich people become richer. We trust them. They're not going to mess up with the economy because they have the most to lose because they're rich, right? So they will preserve the economy. They like to grow. They don't like to disrupt. Is that true? This is actually called good oligarchy hypothesis. And it may be true for a single blockchain system. Look at Bitcoin or Ethereum. It may not be true. Look at the blockchain as a whole, as many blockchains. Because I can lose money for myself one blockchain, but I can make money in another blockchain. So it's not very clear, right? So because it's so new, because people want to jump to this concept because it solves the scalability part of a proof of work. And now we get today we've seen right with so many ICOs is the whole spectrum of different type of system, like a hybrid system. In this end, we have maybe Bitcoin as a decentralized system. We have maybe Amazon, Facebook, Google as a centralized system. And in between now we have a variety of systems. They use public ledger to some extent, but not completely. So we don't understand them. The reason is we just, we understand how they actually build the design, but we just don't understand the consequence of such kind of system. Because proof of work is much well understood because it has been there for many years. But those in between, and we just don't understand them. Right, there people actually start to look at them. What is the measurement of decentralization, right? Maybe I can come up with measure decentralization. How decentralized those hybrid systems are, and also Gini ratio. Right? People say, well, maybe I can use that concept as well to measure how the crypto asset, the wealth, actually distributed among the nodes and wallets, and have a concept of Gini ratio and apply it. Why this matter? Why it's matter? I will explain. If a proof of work system, let's assume Alice, she owned 90% of the coin. Let's say Ether. And let's assume the rest of them owned less than 10% coins. But most of the computing power. Now let's say computing power. What if someone say, let's create a smart contract. Just take all the coins Alice owns and divide it among ourselves. And then what will happen? I don't know what will happen. Because you see, the assumption here is Alice owns most of the coins. And then those guys, they own most of the computing power. So computing is power in this case. And if someone put a smart contract there, let's divide all the coins among us from Alice. What will happen? What do you think will happen? I don't know. Right? But then from historic evidence, I think actually what will happen is they will take away the coins from Alice. And why not? Right? That's a redistribution of wealth. And so now we have this question, right? If we use public ledger to store value, right? And is this network actually sustainable, stable, and safe as a way for Alice to store value, right? We don't know actually. We think we know, and we maybe start to use those delegated proof of stake. We even become less certain that actually will be. So there are this long-term sustainability question. So what is the governance sustainability? And how to resolve this dispute, how to resolve hard forking, and if you have physical assets mapped to Ethereum and with tokens, what if Ethereum fork, right? And the physical asset won't fork, your house now going to become two houses, right? The land is still the same land, now going to become fork, and then you have two owners, right? And what about the failure of consensus? What actually can be learned from human history? So because the governance of the public ledger blockchain based on consensus is we have pretty much resemble human society, right? If we have delegated proof of stake and proof of stake, and it's not much different from the political, social, economic system we have in the human society, and also about economic sustainability, right? So how sustainable this is in terms of creating incentives for the stakeholder to sustain the infrastructure for a really long time. When I say really long time, I'm not talking about even like thousands of years, like a pyramid. I talk about copyright. We put copyright on blockchain. Copyright lasts 70 years. Sometimes, depending on the content, it could be more than 100 years. If you put a trademark on blockchain, the trademark, right, some actually a few hundred years. And health records, right? Health record from birth to death. That's also right a long period of time. So do you trust the public ledger today that actually can last that longer? Or eventually we'll get into a situation there are no incentives for people to keep going, then this whole thing is not going to work, right? So how to create a public ledger that is sustainable? As here, I don't know if you watched Santiago, where that's revealed how old everybody is. And then basically, right, the judge has this records. He played this game. That he had the highest records, he wanted to keep it, and then was finally snatched. But if that record on the blockchain, maybe after some number of years, still there, you won't be worried about that. Okay, so this is an argument for self-governance, right? So people will say, oh, this can be governed, right? We have authorities, right? We have ICC, we have CFTC, so they can regulate this thing and protect the investors or consumers. And but here the question is how to regulate something means to be not regulated. The distributed ledger as a P2P or decentralized infrastructure, it's very difficult to regulate. People say, oh, we can regulate exchange. They're centralized, and then they're there, and then we can regulate them. But exchange can be decentralized. Right? Everything can be decentralized, so it's very difficult to regulate. And if we consider this digital ledger as a public infrastructure, right, for exchange of value, or storing value, and how to keep it open, right? It's permissionless, it's public, and it's fair to the participant who contribute and who are players in the system in really long period of time, right? I say forever. It's not easy, and we don't know the answer actually. And no one knows the answer. So, and also if we talk about self-governance, right? That's what people say. Oh, we need self-governance, and we need a blockchain code. We need a code of conduct, right? And because there's so many like scams going on right now. So what are the forms of governance, right? What are the rules and contracts? Who make those rules and contracts, right? And what are the roles of the users, token holders, crypto asset investors? And again, it's back to the question that is actually a good oligarchy assumption or hypothesis actually true or not, and then what will happen eventually with those questions. Because if you just look at the short period of time, then it's not a problem. But if you look long term, there's all questions. Okay, so we do have a lot of risk in terms of using it and then protecting it in terms of regulatory risk of unsustainability, hostile takeover, because computing power, right? There was some news recent, right? There was a Russian scientist working for the nuclear facility used a supercomputer to mine Bitcoin. So imagine, right? If government try to use this supercomputers, the machine power, they can take over. They can, right? Who said the NSA doesn't have the supercomputer to take over Ethereum, right? They could, right? But sure, you say there's a hypothesis. This is just a likely scenario, not going to ever happen. You never know, right? So what the risk of being controlled by oligarchies? There are a bunch of questions in terms of how to sustain, to keep it open.
What do you mean by the first one? Regulatory risk?
Regular in terms of the government can say, okay, depending on which government, right? They can regulate the exchange, say, don't, right, in terms of, oh, you have to follow this and that. The second is they can ban ownership of certain things, right? So depending on the nature of. But I think in the US, I feel like it's difficult to ban ownership of assets, but they can regulate the exchange. But in certain other places, they could do that, right? Just go after the owners. Okay, the last one, right? If we think there is a way to make this public ledger as an infrastructure in really long period of time, as a way for storing value, exchanging value, and transactions, and it's public infrastructure for trade of assets. It's not different from ocean, right? It's for trade. It's trade different continents, and then it's come to control and dominance. Who control the trade and who dominate, right? So look at the human history, right? So we have all those people who trade between countries, continents, and then they make profit by controlling the trade routes and the way of trade. I think about blockchain is actually a road, right? Similar to ocean. It's basically an infrastructure for trade crypto assets. So when it has hundreds, maybe billions of value, no one really thinks too big about it. But if there are multi-trillions of dollars there for trading crypto assets, and then this becomes a major problem because there will be people who try to control and dominate. And then how to keep, again, back to the question, how to keep it open, fair, and sustainable is always a challenge, and it's not actually easy to achieve that. Okay, so that's pretty much end of my presentation. I have questions. I think not much time left.
I'm not a developer, but my question is, I understand how the blockchain works, I understand how the nodes work, I understand the algorithm so who wins first and.
Yeah.
How does the Bitcoin or whatever the coin is get generated to pay the miners?
Oh, I see. So that's a very good question. Actually, I talked with people from our business school finance department. I spent some time, and then finally I realized why they sometimes like some sort of different, not on the same page in terms of how the bitcoins were generated and what's the process. Here is think about maybe another good example, but I use that as it's the Bitcoin in the Bitcoin case is used as an incentive for people to going maintain the records, basically add a block of transactions. So in the case of it's called blockchain, so it's a chain of blocks, right? It's not a very good name, I agree. And a chain of blocks, and then each block is just a set of transactions, right? A transfer coin to B, and then C transfer coin to B, so that kind of thing. And it's based on consensus. So and then it's an open public system, and the way they do it is they have to reward people who maintain this, right, to create that block in the first place, and others will accept and say, oh, I checked and everything looks good, and there's no fraud and no cheating, and I will accept. But it's a public infrastructure. So if you keep rewarding the same person for nodes, like let's say, okay, I trust you, you just keep maintain all the records. So now it's not like open, and then no incentive for anybody else to join, to reduce to a centralized system. So the way the Bitcoin works is you create the coins, right, as a way to reward those help you to maintain the transaction. But this has to be done in a way that sort of similar to a lottery scheme. Lottery scheme means that not deterministic or predictable by the participant. So that's where the proof of work applies. So it's a separate from the blocks or the transactions. It's just you could design hundreds of different ways of doing this, but you just think this way. It's a lottery scheme, and using proof of work, it's used as a way to reward or give incentive to people who help to maintain the system, but they cannot predict they will earn the rewards.
How does the reward get to the miner?
Oh, I see. So that's very easy, right? It's all about it's public key, private key. So you can always send as long as you keep your private key or public key, all the transfer is transfer.
How's that?
It's consensus, right? It's consensus, right?
But the actual Bitcoin, if there's only there's a finite amount.
Yeah. Yes.
How's it getting to the miner?
So basically, as I said, right?
The computer, the
yeah, it's a good consensus.
algorithm.
Yeah, it's consensus. So everyone verify there's a type of proof of work, right? You have to do something, and then they say, oh yeah, you solved this puzzle. So the proof of work is like a solve a puzzle. It doesn't have to be the one used in Bitcoin. Any puzzle you can come up with, but something like the one hashing is a very stable and predictable fair. But you could use some other ways. You solve a puzzle and then you show you solve it, and there was some sort of like a similar to lottery based on consensus. They agree that you should be the winner. So a way, maybe I use this example, maybe not perfect. I hope. Let's say you want people to clean the streets, give them garbage like that, and then they go to clean, and then they come back with say who has garbage in their bag, and then there's the lottery scheme that say who has the most. I will reward them a token or coin. You can keep it, and then everyone can verify it because they look at it, right? Everyone put their garbage back here. This is the garbage, and then there were like maybe 100 of them, and they say everyone say, oh look at it, this is the most, right? That's the reward a coin. Okay, tomorrow go and clean, come back. Oh, this has the most. I reward this.
So who is it that's rewarding?
It's a consensus by the community. There are no things.
Where's the coin coming from?
Oh, it's coming from nowhere.
I know.
Yeah, it is coming from nowhere.
If there's a finite amount,
It's finite amount.
This is how new coins are created. There's a finite amount today, but as the correct me if I'm wrong, but as the miners are working the puzzles, one more fraction of a Bitcoin is created up until our 2040 deadline, where there's no more created, but a
So the
algorithm.
system is creating the new.
It creates a new
So
one.
what's gonna happen when there are no more?
Oh, yeah, that's
Then
very
we
good
all
question.
fight
On
over
a private blockchain, you can probably.
That's very good. What happens
What is
after
it?
that? That's very good question. We don't know. I think there's some magic right now working out because of the way Bitcoin, right? But again, Bitcoin is only one system.
And the
You could
problem
design
is you can
systems
do your
work in a
own way.
different way. Yes, and in the case of Bitcoin, just like how it's designed, it's getting less and less coins. Take a longer time to mine the coin. That's why the transactions also get slower, right? So like take a longer time. And and also the incentives wise, right? If the price of Bitcoin goes up compared with a few years ago, that big incentive for people to buy, even take longer to get earn it. But price doesn't like that. If the price, let's say, didn't go up, right? This is remain the same. Actually, it's well, this is sustainable or not? I don't know, right? But that's no one has answers. But that's something based on what is the Bitcoin price in 8 years? Let's say, will still, but it's getting harder to earn Bitcoin. Will the community or the miners still support, right? Will just I don't know. That's a good question. So there are a lot of right. We cannot go back to people.
Oh, there are a lot of coin offerings that say they've got a finite amount of coins.
That's you must, right? The reason why is you reward them by creating a coin from nowhere. You can't say I have unlimited. You say that, I will say this
Yeah,
works.
but what happens when they
Right,
run
right. The
out?
worst is right. So I'm gonna accept it. So you don't have to leave it.
I have a different topic. You mentioned mobile,
Right.
and I'm familiar with like Shi and I'm not sure how they work, so I'm just wondering what's the environment and like are you familiar? What are the different
Oh, I see.
what you're working
Yeah. There are a lot of ICOs or developers or companies that are developing some for mobile. That's that's the key, right? Because there are only perhaps 30 million of some of the society, the users, right? All user means not really the user buying things, maybe they're just the owners, right? The how to have more broader right adoption of more people use it as in like the smartphones is the key, right? To and then we'll realize that the key is how to enable this, right? The browsers, apps, also different solutions. How ours is doing is how to verify. As a question is we trust a portal, right? That does everything we use. A lot of them like just like exchange, right? It's like exchange with the mobile client. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how as a mobile client, without storing the whole ledger, verify the statement of transactions. That means you take some responsibility of exchange your own hands. They can verify this is true instead of depending on the portal you connect from your app or browser saying they say it's true. So really, so that more toward decentralized work. Definitely the way to do that in a weird class. Because nothing decentralized in a blockchain cannot do what can do centralized cannot do. But it's all because of trust.
I'm the bad kid walking into class at the very end. Can I get a copy of your stack?
That's what.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a flat tire. So.
Okay, any
Do you see the future of Bitcoin more as a lot of people say a store of value like digital gold, since the transactions are so high and such?
yeah,
Do you see the future as more as those transaction fees lowering, extremely low and it being used as a currency that we can, go to Starbucks and buy coffee with? Or do you see a society of the future where we use a certain currency like Litecoin, let's say, to buy coffee, but for larger transactions, like if I'm buying a house, I would use, Bitcoin or something?
Yeah, very good question. First, right, that's why I'm working with finance department. They're good choosing valuation, right? We have tokens, coins, bitcoins, how to compute the value of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And then one thing is now it's really tied with technology. Technology has no
clear connection with the value, right? So because that's two different questions.
Yeah, it's
That's one. The second one is where does the Bitcoin value come from and if we use the currency? I think for Bitcoin case, right, not for other currency, the Bitcoin has a problem. The problem is the transaction cost goes up with the price of Bitcoin. So you find that, oh, I don't pay the cost, but actually the way it works is to keep the transaction rewarded. Bitcoin price goes up, actually the cost goes up. And then people say this is not going to be sustainable because the Bitcoin price is so high. Well, transaction cost is not low. Why we use this as the purpose, say, as an intermediary for the transaction, like a currency or payment. It may be useful as a way to store value. And then where does that value come from? Because oh, maybe based on consensus, like maybe gold has values based on consensus. Why not? It's a digital version of something similar. I don't know, but that's what is value, right? That's economic or a question, not technology question. But in terms of to sustain it, I think that there's challenges. It seems like the price has to go up to sustain it. That's one. Second one, it seems like transaction cost is high, and then that prohibits certain usage right from the adopted wider transaction cost. There could be a way when after the years they could bring a consensus, no more Bitcoin for transaction, you're gonna pay Bitcoin for fractional Bitcoin to right to keep the transaction and going. That could be right. That will happen, but will that how much that will the cost? I don't know. So, and also to compete with other transactional systems, maybe they will be much lower cost. So then, from the transaction cost perspective, why use Bitcoin? That's always a question.
Right.
But if we're storing value, right, say Bitcoin there's consensus, and then people believe it has value, we keep it. That's a separate question.
Could you elaborate on why transaction fees go up as the price goes up?
Well, actually, it's kind of a Bitcoin, right? You add a block of transactions to bring a Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin price goes up. Then that means divided by the number of transactions, that the per transaction cost goes up. And one way you can solve this is by adding bigger blocks. Right? Blocks is very big. It's many transactions. Let's say a solvent versus a billion. So, but the problem with increasing the size of the block is I'm slower.
Even slower.
Yeah,
I guess
slower.
what I don't understand is, if price is fluctuating and almost arbitrary today, it's,
Oh, I see. Yeah, you go back to it.
8,000, now it's 10,000. How does that affect the computing cost is still the same. The work involved is still the same. Is it a proportional cost? It has to say, is the transaction fee proportional to the price?
It's the cost of Bitcoin.
Right. Let's say, Bitcoin's arbitrary number, $10,000.
Right.
It costs a percentage amount or it costs a fixed rate amount. And so when the price goes up, then the transaction fee just goes up. Does it go up proportionally?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But eventually there could be concerns and say, oh, how much does it cost? Will that be competitive? These are two different arguments, right? One is say it's a way to store value. The other one is say it has value because it can enable low cost transactions. These are two different arguments.
Yeah.
So from the transaction cost perspective, will Bitcoin remain right competitive in terms of cost and how guarantee that or things like that?
Yeah. I mean, with my personal is that it's just digital gold.
Yeah.
The other coins are going to actually be able to do
Right.
transactions.
Right. They couldn't say when it costs much lower. Okay, I know it's drag and and to the next person, any question?
I have a quick question. So I know oil is traded in U.S. dollars around the world, right?
Yeah.
So as far as like cryptocurrency, is because Japan is so pro crypto.
Yeah.
Is it sort of traded in Japanese yen and it's a foreign exchange game at that point, or how does that work?
Oh, I see. That's a great question. I think a lot of us started now it's Japan, right? Because I mean, no one can predict the future, right? So the thing is, I see basically this relates to the government's right their position, and maybe there are certain maybe as this evolves, certain countries will see this now. Just because we see problems, we just see opportunities, right? So I think US is more see problems, right? ICC, so this is just you guys are just selling security without the registration. We need to do something, right? There's a hearing going on. They want to regulate the anti-money laundering, right? Those questions, and then the drug dealing, right? Those U.S. more see problem, but some other countries maybe they see an opportunity, right? So this trade, eventually where the consensus is, and then because this really is whether they're right. The Japan is kind of open to saying, oh, this is we need to regulate it, and don't say don't regulate us with self-regulation, right? That can make sure bad things won't happen, and somehow they're not like China or some other places. That's why it now seems like right mostly the trade actually is right from Japan. The large percentage of them. How this evolve. It's dynamic. It changes every day, I think. Right, because new policies. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I have a
One last question.